appreciate Chuck being here. Dr. Chuck Adams, University of Florida, and Florida Sea Grant, undergraduate of this department, and then he moved on to Ag Econ.
Yes.
And that's what he really wanted to talk about, was his perspective on how his career worked and how he sees that working for other people too, other students. And I'm not a big believer in long introduction. So combining natural resources and social sciences, a variable career path. Take it over, Chuck.
Yeah, sorry about that. I did have some slides. I even thought at the beginning to do this kind of off the cuff anyway. You turn on the TV and you watch these motivational speakers. They don't use any PowerPoint stuff, and I know students get tired of PowerPoints, I suspect.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, anyway. Well, yeah, so the title of this slide was, as you can all see right here, combing. I had combing natural resources and social sciences, a viable career path, as well as learning how to spell. But the point was, I was hoping there'd be a lot of students here. The point I wanted to make was that your career path is rarely straight. I mean, you should be prepared to make those kind of deviations as you move along, be kind of intellectually nimble and be willing to grab an opportunity when it presents itself. Because there will be opportunities that will present themselves to you that you can't even anticipate right now. At the National Shellfish Association meetings, the 107th meeting in Monterey here about 2 weeks ago, we had a session that this is what we were talking about, is career path is rarely straight. Be prepared to make those kinds of choices and be prepared to recognize these opportunities when they present themselves to you, because it could be a hard left turn at Albuquerque, And I had a slide up there. I had this little conceptual construct that I'd come up with, and it was too bad we don't have a chalkboard, but it was a straight line, and it was that line represented you maintaining your path, your expected path. And I was trying to come up with some way to look at deviations from that and measure uncertainty. I gave up. So it was just a straight line, and it's like you start here, you're going to be a small animal vet. You come to A&M, you're going to be a small animal vet. That's what you want to be. And you progress along that line, you go up, and you become a small animal vet in Royce City, Texas. That's where you're at, and everything's fine. You never left the path. Or maybe you wanted to be a proctologist. You've always wanted to be a proctologist your whole life. So you start down here at A&M, you go to pre-med, you get into med school, you go all the way up, and right at the end, man, you decide you want to be a dermatologist or something. And you make that there's a little bit of wiggle room at the top of that career path, but basically you've stayed along there, your expectations have been true. And you got guys like me that move up. I mean, I wanted to be a fisheries biologist at a field station in Texas, maybe Rockport or Dickinson or something. That's what I wanted to do. And not too far up my career path, I made that left turn at Albuquerque. I just completely departed from where I thought I was going to go, and I would never have guessed that. But it's been pretty cool. I was pretty passionate about this career path that I saw. I grew up in coastal Texas and just grew up on the water, fishing and hunting ducks and stuff. That's just what I did. So I thought about, I don't know, if you had lots of choices you were thinking about as a high school student about what you wanted to do. Or maybe everybody else went through this process. I had an interest in, my dad was a corporate pilot. That's all he ever did. So I was raised around airplanes and airports and duster strips and stuff. So I was going to be an aerospace engineer. I thought I'll go to Texas A&M. I used to build airplane models. Remember, they were hanging from all over the ceiling and balsa wood models and stuff. That's just what I did. I loved it. Well, I wasn't fishing. And but in high school, I was maybe a B student in math, and that scared the hell out of me. I thought, there's no way I'll survive at A&M in math, So let's scratch that off. And had an interest in all kinds of electrical stuff. I thought that was fun, but electrical engineering, there's that word again, engineering, math, scared me to death. Geology was interesting to me, had a lot of things that I was really interested in, but when it came down to it, it was better understanding natural resources and marine resources and things like that was what I was passionate about. So I wasn't a placekeeper student. It wasn't a placekeeper degree for me. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to pursue that. And so, but I made a shift, and it came very unexpectedly. So I came here in 1972 as a student. Went to school up at Carrollton Farmers Branch, north of Dallas, and man, this place was it was a lot different in 1970. What year did you come here?
75.
I thought you came here earlier than that. Okay. Well, I was in one of your first classes. I mean, very first class you were teaching. It was, what was it? Was it a theology class, or was it was taxonomy class maybe, or I forget.
Aquaculture and mariculture.
Okay.
I did teach fishery management to game wardens.
Okay.
And I never had a course in fishery management.
Okay, all right, okay. It must have been aquaculture then, yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I show up here in 72. I mean, there's like 15,000 students here in 72. How much did you pay for in-state tuition now per semester hour?
Per semester, for 12 to 15 hours, it's right around $5 to $6 grand.
So $400 an hour is what you're.
Yeah.
I think I did that right. It was $4 a semester hour when I came here in 72.
$4.
Yeah, my dad bitched about that. You know, it was the building use fee that got you. That was the one that added up, was that building use fee. You know, but $4 a semester hour, man. Yeah. Yeah, it was a different place. And the geographic center of campus might have been that Saul Ross statue out there in front of the academic building. There was nothing. It was just cow pastures, goats, a hog farm out there. We used to take quad people at the hog farm, you know. There was nothing on that side of the tracks past the USDA building. It was just a different place, and Dixie Chicken wasn't open yet. Yeah, that used to be a little pool hall, and when that opened, I was in Davis Gary Hall. I mean, you could throw a baseball to that place. That was dangerous. Drinking age was 18 back then. We just walked across the street, you know. It was, anyway. I know. I think back on all the crazy stuff, but anyway, I was passionate about this degree plan. I mean, it was probably the first week or 2 weeks that I was here as a freshman. I forget who it was, but somebody said, y'all need to come up to Nagel Hall, room 200 or something, I don't know. At 7 o'clock tonight, we're going to have a meeting with all you incoming freshmen. So we thought, oh boy, you know, we're going to be knighted or something. It's going to be a glorious occasion. And we all show up, you know, in a room, and here comes I don't know who it was, probably a senior faculty member. Might have been the chair. I don't even know who the chair was in 72.
Yeah.
Somebody walked in the room, and we're all sitting there just, you know, waiting to hear great wisdom, and he goes, you guys need to be thinking about an alternative degree plan because there are no jobs in fishery science. Seriously. And I mean, we went white. I did. Some of the people in there, again, it was a placeholder degree for them. They didn't care. You know, okay, I'll go to marketing or I'll do something else. And, you know, a lot of people bolted, but I didn't. I stuck it out, you know, stuck it out. And I'm going somewhere with this, so stick with me. So stuck it out, you know, finished. Into my third year, it's probably this guy's fault right here, because I got really interested in aquaculture issues, and I got exposed to shrimp mariculture. It's just cranking up in Texas back. I mean, it had been happening around the globe, but it was just starting to get interesting here in Texas. And one of the bottlenecks was getting, back then it was Pinea sativora, the white shrimp, was the species of choice. You know, Vanema hadn't even made the scene yet. So, but one of the big bottlenecks was the sexual maturation. You just couldn't get these things to spawn consistently, the females to sexually mature. So I thought, oh, good, I'll do that. Bob Brick was here. Bob had an interest in this sort of stuff too, and I got really interested in this and talking to people, and met Jack Parker over at Sea Grant, and I assume you know what Sea Grant is. Okay. And I was over there working as a gopher, doing stuff, and met Jack. So I really got interested in this shrimp mariculture stuff. So that's what I wanted. I thought, well, okay, I'll address this sexual maturation issue. I'll find somebody in the department that wants to work on that, thinking Bob Brick maybe or somebody. Nothing. And so it was like, what am I going to do now? You know, I'd like to pursue that. Shrimp mariculture is really interesting. Rich Noble was my advisor, and I went to Dr. Noble's office one day and crying on his desk, and he says, why don't you go over to Ag Econ and speak to a guy by the name of Wade Griffin over there. He wants to look at the business side of this shrimp mariculture stuff. He didn't have anybody, and so I thought, well, I'd taken one ag econ class, and I wasn't enamored with ag econ. I mean, I did okay in the class, but you know, so I went, oh great. So I walked over there and met with Wade Griffin for a little while, and he offered me an assistantship because I had interest, and I was articulate, I guess. I don't know. He didn't kick me out of his office, and so he says, "But what you got to do is you got to go out and start collecting." My goal was to do a little bioeconomic model of a shrimp mariculture system in Brazoria County, Texas, because that's where the experiment stations, research ponds were. They're on the Texaco property. You got to go down there and help them run the hatchery and run the ponds and collect all your cost data. So that's what I did for a couple of years, was go down there and actually co-manage that hatchery at Fort Crockett in Galveston, and ran that with Corny Mock, who just passed away recently. Hated to hear that. Harry Cook passed away too, I saw. But yeah, Corny, working with Corny was a trip. Oh my gosh. But so we'd go out and source the female shrimp, the gravid females that were, we'd get them with, offshore with the spermatophores on them and everything, and bring them in, spawn them, or they'd abort the eggs in the lab, and that's where we got our eggs and our nauplii and our larvae, and then we'd put them in the ponds up at Angleton and grow them out. Anyway, I got really interested in that, and that was very, very cool. So I made that jump to the dark side in economics, and didn't really intend to do it, but I did, and found it really interesting. My thesis basically said, it wasn't popular at the time, was if you want to invest money in shrimp mariculture in Texas, don't put it in a CD and forget about it. That was my final paragraph, and it was not popular with folks. But anyway, that's then I went ahead and stayed on in ag econ because I did find it very interesting. The people I was working with, I thought it was just fascinating, and I began to see this working with using economics to help manage this resource, thinking beyond just mariculture of shrimp, but thinking about shrimp in general and other types of marine resources and how we utilize those and what all is involved. Back in the 70s, you didn't really have the management plans you have now. That all started back in the early 80s. But you could see it coming, Hung around for another couple of years as a research associate working on a shrimp budget. No, it was a budget generating package, Fortran model for commercial fishing vessels and aquaculture programs. And we were collaborating with 4 of the universities around the country using cards. You don't even have a clue what I'm talking about, but we were talking about that earlier. We'd go over to the old Teague building and had just boxes of cards with these designs in case you drop them, and each card was a line of code, and it was crazy. But that was very interesting, fascinating. And I began to see how guys, got faculties over in ag econ, what these guys did, and interacting with students and doing research, and I just thought that's, being a professor at a major university doing this kind of work is a pretty good gig, No, I can't make mine stop either.
I turned it off.
I just killed it, yeah.
It's on
Yeah.
orange, I don't know what happened. Sorry, I'll turn it completely.
But so I began to see, how that worked, and how economics can be used to not only assist businesses in their decision-making process, but also assist managers in terms of the more holistic process of efficiently managing these resources. That was very, very interesting. What made it interesting to me, though, was I had this fundamental grounding in the biology from my fishery science class. Fishery science degree. I mean, I got a very good education over in wildlife fishery science, and you will too. It was exciting. It was interesting. I don't know whether you still get to go down to the Moody Lab and spend the summer down there. Do y'all do that anymore, or you don't do that anymore? Oh, that's a shame. Well, that was a hoot. It was a summer between our junior and senior year. We would go down to the Moody Lab. We had dorm rooms there at Fort Crockett. It was on Fort Crockett by the seawall. We spent the whole summer there, and we did a lot of field work, went out on boats, shrimp boats. We went back up in the bay, and we took invertebrate taxonomy. We took population dynamics, statistics, in the ichthyology class. Like 14 hours, you know, that. It was a hoot. It was a blast. And I learned so much doing that. But the point I was making was what made it really click was understanding the benefit, applying economics to these resource management issues, but then understanding some of the biological, environmental, habitat implications on the other side and how those merge. So that's kind of my sales pitch to you. Is be thinking about. I don't know what your game plan is. You're an undergraduate?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I don't know what your game plan is, but my sales pitch I wanted to make today to the students that might attend this morning is, be thinking about maybe marrying what you're doing with a social science degree, because it's using social science. If you have an interest in being involved in resource management issues, it's just that's what it's all about. It's managing people. The fact that we're even worried about these resources is because we value them. And we may not value them from an extractive use perspective, but we probably value them, most everybody, from an existence perspective. I mean, they just want to know that resource is there, as pristine as it can be. You know, if you don't like the fact that we're trawling for shrimp on the bottom that kill sea turtles, that means you value sea turtles. You've got a dollar value you probably put on that. You know, in the economics, I had a couple of slides here that I was going to try to show you how the management process is trying to. We're moving from this open access approach to managing fisheries, where everybody, as long as you can afford a boat and a permit, you can buy the gas, you go. That's not the way it works anymore. Now it's becoming what they call a rational approach, where only a certain number of people are allowed to get into or access the resource for extractive purposes. And there's a lot of social issues and economic issues to determine who that is. And then once you get this, now you have this smaller fleet. Everyone has a quota share that you can sell or lease, or again, those markets that develop. That's all economics. And then you've still got to have the allowable biological catch that the biologists come up with through the stock assessment process. But once you come up with that, it's an exercise in economics or politics and other social sciences is what it's all about. And so I had a slide just to show that the open access traditional model allowed you to overfish the fishery biologically and economically. And what you're trying to do is move it back the other way and maximize rents or profits. In economic theory, marginal revenue equals marginal cost. When you do that, it pushes the maximum. Economics is a process of optimizing, finding equilibriums. Accounting is totals. You just you ledger things up. You just have totals. Economics is looking at the margin. And when you start looking at the margin like that, marginal revenue and marginal cost, you find that profit. And that profit is well before you get to the point where you're maximizing the harvest in a fishery. Marginal revenue is at the top up here, but when you throw a cost relationship in there, it pushes everything back. So the management process is trying to get at that sweet spot. You're never going to get there, but it's a process of moving toward it. And economics is a key role in that. So does understanding the habitat requirements and the population dynamics of the fish, or whatever it is you're trying to get at. And the national standards that are part of the Magnuson-Stevens Act, which is what we use to manage fisheries in the federal waters, whatever it is, 3 to 9 miles in the Gulf, out to 200 miles. And there's a whole host of species that are managed under this process in the Gulf. But there's 10 national standards that they try to adhere to, all these things. It's kind of like you're going to manage gag grouper, but you've got to check and make sure you do this, 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 this. And about 4 or 5 of those, and if I can find the slide that I had it on here. I also had some other slides here just trying to make a point that these industries are extremely valuable to the Gulf economy. Extremely valuable. So that's why we're worried about them. There's a lot of money being generated through the recreational and commercial use of these resources. I had a bunch of slides here for that. But these 9 national standards. One is you will achieve optimal yield. You'll use the best scientific data. You will do so on reasonable and delineable management units within the resource. You'll address allocation issues. Now here we go. This is a big one, and this is all economics. You can talk about, nowadays, you can talk about managing snapper, red snapper in the Gulf of Mexico. But that's not the issue anymore. The issue is who gets it. All right, who gets that red snapper? That's a big one. The state of Texas right now is trying to, if you listen to a lot of other folks around the Gulf, state of Texas is Satan incarnate right now because they're trying to put the allocation or the use of the red snapper into the state's purview, take it away from the feds. And the other people around the Gulf are afraid that's going to just cheat them out of fish. Anyway, but this whole allocation between commercial users, recreational users, and now you've got the commercial guys, you've got the private boat guys like us, and then you've got the for-hire sector too. You got the charter boats, the head boats, the guide boats, yaddy yaddy, and that's another sector that's being brought into this. And who gets what, unfortunately, is politics and history in terms of what they've gotten in the past. But where it's moving is, and it should be, a lot of it should be, an economic decision-making process. Looking at the value marginal product across these various users and try to take it out of the political realm as best you can. But make sure good science is guiding the overall allowable catch, but the economics and social science should be guiding who gets what, how much. So efficiency is another one. Variations and contingencies, I don't quite know what that was. Costs and benefits, making sure you do this on a cost-effective basis and the benefits that are accruing to the sectors are maximized if possible. And also communities is another one. This is number 8, is communities. And this is where other social sciences might come in, sociology, anthropology, things like that, to assure management process doesn't unfairly impact some of these communities from Brownsville to Key West that are very dependent on commercial and recreational use of these resources. That's a big deal. Bycatch and then safety of life at sea was number 10. I think that's a new one they just put in recently. Probably because of the Deadliest Catch TV show. I don't know. But anyway, so my point to you as a student is that, you know, you get your degree in fishery science, and obviously the biological component of this process is vital and it's critical. That's where it starts. But in terms of, since we're managing people, you know, that's what's happening is we're managing people. You've got to have that economic and social component into that process, or, you know, the resource won't be effectively managed. People won't respect. Enforcement will be an impossibility, in my opinion. You know, so you got to have people feel like that they're involved in the process and that they're accruing the benefits that they think are fair. So that was kind of my sales pitch to you. And let me see what else I'm making. Well, okay, I had another slide here. Well, how do you do that? You know, I mean, how do you? So what are you, a senior?
Yes, graduated May.
Okay, so you're kind of into the process deep, and yeah. I didn't do it until I got out. I mean, I kind of had a sense that I was going to make that switch over to ag economics my senior year. How would you do it? I guess maybe you could do maybe it's a little late to do like a double major, obviously, or a minor. I ended up just going over there and talking to Wade Griffin, and he goes, "Well, let's just do it." And I think I took a couple of micro remedial. I don't even know. I can't recall how I did it, but I finished up in less than 2 years. Went through the whole thing, wrote my thesis, and did all my research, and I don't know whether that's even possible anymore. Maybe that was you know, we have people come into our department at the University of Florida that come in from other departments, and we kind of coach them up, and they'll get degrees, master's degrees within our program. So that's a possibility. But the point I was going to make was, I think people who have an understanding of the biological sciences and also have training in the social sciences are at an absolute premium in this whole process of managing resources. If you can, I do a lot of this. I mean, I've been on the council, scientific statistical committee of the Gulf Council for 20 years, and I'm off now, and then the South Atlantic Council, and it's a process of working with biologists and trying to get them to understand the economic concepts that really are important in this management process. And if you can speak to them in their language, which I've been able to do, because that's who I work with, and get them to understand these other social perspectives, then the process is really going to be moving along faster than it would otherwise. So people who can speak to both sides of that are rare, and they're very valuable to the process. I've got several colleagues that I work with that did the same thing I did. They started out in aquaculture or fisheries or biology and moved into social sciences, and they're involved in this resource management process. I don't know whether you're fisheries or you terrestrial stuff. Or
Wildlife fishery sciences, wildlife ecology.
Okay. I don't know what kind of options there might be or opportunities there might be from that perspective. I know there's, well, I don't know. Water management is a big one. Someone who has an appreciation for water resources from that perspective, that yet knows the allocation issues that are confronting everybody these days. Maybe you can think, I guess I'm at a loss here in terms of it, grazing privileges on federal property and those kinds of common property kind of, this is, we're dealing here as a common property, and that's the difference. This is nobody owns the fish. That's the reason that it allows itself to be overfished, is that there's an incomplete set of market signals, and no one really knows when they push it too far, because individually they're acting on their individual perspective and don't fail to see the social costs in aggregate. So, but I think these people with a combination of perspectives and expertise I had down here, they're in demand, and I really believe that. I mean, this process that I work with all the time. Right now, I'm working with the Gulf States Marine Fisheries Commission on a fisheries profile. I've done a number of those, and just sitting down and working with these biologists from the various states on the species of choice, and helping them understand the markets that exist, the values that are coming out of that resource, and why, and who is generating those values is vital to the process. And if you could speak to them, that really helps. You're employable with that kind of a combination in academia, state agencies, several federal agencies, even NGOs, although they may have a bit of an agenda, possibly. No, certainly. But you need to understand that, and also within the private sector with consulting firms and these kinds of groups, I think there's a lot of opportunities for you to find employment. And what's really exciting for me anyway is it's the diverse topic set that I've been able to work with. You didn't see the first slide. I'm the marine economist with the Florida Sea Grant Program, statewide marine economist, and I'm also in the Food and Resource Economics Department as their extension marine economist. So I've got a full extension appointment, but do a lot of applied research. You can't do extension unless you do applied research. You got nothing to extend, So you got to do that. You got to chase dollars, and but the topic set that I've worked on is absolutely, it's been really exciting, and it's international. I mean, I've done crazy things, helping the guys out in Micronesia figure out if a commercial sponge culture operation would be financially viable for Micronesia. I'm working with a buddy down in Brazil, the Federal University in Ceará, Brazil, looking at some of the economic forces that are playing on their lobster fishery in Brazil, which is their number one fishery. They're overfishing it. They're recruit overfishing it. They're just overfishing it, and trying to help them develop a piece that describes these economic externalities that exist, that are creating these problems. Why they exist. Aquaculture worked in Nicaragua when Hurricane Mitch came through in '98, wiped out all their shrimp farms. They wanted to come back with intensive culture operations rather than only extensive operations, and where you might have just a tenth of the surface area producing the same amount of shrimp. And went down and spent a lot of time down there working with their industry and their investors and the University of Central America there, dealing with how do you do that? What are the economic implications of that? Do a lot of work with issues like red tides in the Gulf. In Florida, we have a lot of red tide issues, and what are those impacts, and why should the state be dumping money into better understanding and predicting, if you can, red tides, why they happen. Do a lot with aquaculture in Florida. It's hard clam culture. That's our #1 food item that's cultured. Otherwise, it's ornamental fish, and that's freshwater. So that's why I've always drawn a line for me. But we're also looking right now at another species of clam for them to grow. It's indigenous sunray Venus clam, Microcallista nembosa. Beautiful clam. It's cool because when you cook it, it turns red. It's got a proteinaceous thing on the shell and the valves, and when you steam it, it turns red like a lobster. It's so cool. I mean, we put these things in markets. So I got them and put them in the local markets around the state of Florida, and the chefs go wild over these things. We just can't get hatcheries to produce them. And now, since Apalachicola, the oyster fishery in Apalachicola has gone belly up for a variety of reasons. The state now is allowing us to look at midwater culture of oysters. In Florida, we had to stay only so many inches, I forget what it is, off the bottom. You couldn't use the water column to culture. But now, because of the kind of the dire strait the resources in, they're kind of going, okay, well, all right, y'all can use the water column. And for so they're looking at using racks and bags and flippable bags and stuff in the water column for oyster culture, triploids now. They're looking at triploids. So, because they won't go through the spawning process, and you have the disease and the mortality associated with the spawning process, and so that triploids is what we're looking at now. Anyway, there's a lot of economics in that. It's just interesting. It's helping people understand what the investment costs are and the likely payoff, all these kinds of things. Anyway, so it's a soup to nuts, kind of cover the waterfront topics that you get to work on. And I've got a couple of ex-students here on campus. Marco's one of them, and we looked at cultured sturgeon products and the feasibility of that in Southeast markets. And Andrew Apicki, who's now the marine economist for Texas Sea Grant. So Andrew's a sharp guy and doing a lot of work on a variety of different things. He's going to have a very diverse topic set. It's not going to be just shrimp. And he knows that. But he's going to be working on a lot of. In fact, I was down. I heard his talk at AgriLife Center there at yesterday. I guess it was yesterday or the day before. Day before, he talked about aquaponics to a group that was there. So did a real good job. Anyway. Think about it. It's a little late in your degree program at this point, but it's not too late if you want to make that kind of a shift. It may take you a few extra years to do it. I have no idea what your interest set is, but it was a sales pitch is what I wanted to do today, was to get students to be thinking about that as a possibility. To combine a social science with what you're learning right now in your wildlife fishery science degree program, because I think it's a very viable combination. It's marketable and it's fun. It really is. And I'm retiring here in about 4 years. I'm done, and so someone else is going to have to move in. I think if you need to find someone who's got that understanding and of the underlying biological sciences that are undergirding this whole process of managing the people that use that. That's really what it's all about. And if you have that understanding, it's good. That was it.